Hey guys, tonight Marine here with another Semper Sundays, kind of a special one because today this is about a Marine who, as far as I'm aware, is the youngest person to ever receive the Medal of Honor. The youngest. He was 17 when he received his Medal of Honor. So a little about him. He enlisted at the age of 14. 14 years old. What year would that have been? 1942, I believe. He was 14 years old, but at 14 he was 5'8", and he weighed about 180 pounds. So he was a good sized dude. And just looking at a cool picture. And he looked relatively older, from what I understand. And back in the 40s, they didn't have as good of stuff to be able to tell, to look up your exact date and stuff. And so he just told him he was 17. He lied to him, and he told him he was 17 years old. And he ended up joining the Marine Corps Reserve without his mother's consent. And he ended up going to boot camp in Parris Island in South Carolina. He spent a couple years kind of going back and forth doing... what's going on? Yeah, he ended up going back and forth through a couple different units, but he ended up getting shipped to Hawaii, and in 1943, I believe, or maybe 1944, so he'd have been 16 at this point or so. And then one day on the 10th of January, 1945, so he'd be 17, he left his camp and told his friends that he was going to go join a combat unit because he was technically what you would call a pogue. He was non-infantry. And he told his friends that he was going to go join a combat unit. So he ended up stowing away upon the USS Deuel, D-E-U-E-L, I really don't know how to pronounce it, which was transporting units to the 5th Marine Division into combat. He eventually, after staying down there, I want to say he was down there for like almost a month, he was hiding on this ship, he ended up surrendering to the senior troop officer on the 8th of February, dressed in a nice, presentable uniform. And he was told that he has two options. He can remain and join the Marines who were about to hit the beach at Iwo Jima, or he could be sent back and charged with being UA, which is unauthorized absence, which during the time of war they can shoot you. They can line you up on a wall and kill you. And that still applies to this day. It really doesn't happen, but technically they can still do it. He hit the beach with his team on the day, the first day of the Battle of Iwo Jima. And on the second day, they were creeping through a twisting ravine with 3 other men in his rifle team when the Japanese ambushed him and opened up an attack on him. The men were kind of in like this weird small trench, not really a trench so much, but enough to provide some cover, when 2 enemy grenades landed nearby these Marines. Lucas, his name is Jacklyn Lucas, if I didn't say that before, he pushed one of the grenades into the volcanic ash, because Iwo Jima is just a fucking ashy mess of an island, and he shoved it into the ash, covered it up, and then covered it with his rifle and his body. And then he reached out and grabbed the second grenade and pulled that second grenade underneath him. At 17 years old, pulled that second grenade underneath him as well. The grenades went off, and his friends thought that he was dead, and so they ended up leaving him and pushing forward. And what'd you do if someone gets killed like during that sort of fighting, with how many people they lost in Iwo Jima and the other islands? If somebody died, you kept pushing. You didn't let that stop you, because if you stopped to try to help them, or if they were dead and you wanted to look at them, whatever the case, chances are it would get you and the other guys killed. So you just kept pushing. But somehow he was still alive. He was very severely wounded in his right arm, his wrist, right leg, thigh, as well as his chest. But he absolutely, without a doubt, saved his friends from serious injury and death. And he was found by, I imagine, some Navy corpsmen and evacuated to the hospital ship the Samaritan. And then he was treated at a bunch of different field hospitals out there in the Pacific until he arrived in San Francisco in California. They had a medical hospital there for him. And through it all, he ended up undergoing 21 surgeries to fix all his shit. And for the rest of his life, there remained about 200 pieces of metal in his body, some the size of a .22 caliber bullet, that were in his body, just throughout his body from the shrapnel from the grenades. And there was so much shrapnel in him that they would set off airport metal detectors when he would try to fly. And the mark of desertion was removed from his record in August once they realized, when he was in a naval hospital in South Carolina in Charleston. The mark of desertion was removed, because how are you really going to punish somebody for desertion for trying to get into the fight? You know what I'm saying? Especially someone who receives the Medal of Honor. I mean, that's just something that, doesn't happen. And so he was then discharged from the Marine Corps Reserve because of disability from his wounds. And then on the 5th of October, Lucas and then 14 other sailors and Marines, including Pappy Boyington, who I've talked about before, were presented the Medal of Honor by Harry Truman. And this dude's cool. He ended up dying in 2008. He was a fucking cool old man. I mean, you can see interviews with him, and he's just a Marine's Marine. I mean, there is no doubt about it. He ended up joining the Army for 4 years in the 60s. He earned a business degree from High Point University, and I'm not even sure where that is. But he was in the 82nd Airborne Division, from 61 to 65 as a paratrooper to conquer his fear of heights. Jeez, I didn't know this. He fucking survived a training jump in which both of his parachutes did not open because they have their main chute and then a reserve, and apparently both of them did not open. And he still survived that. That fucking crazy bastard. And it's cool. In August of 2006, Lucas, along with 15 living Medal of Honor recipients, were presented the Medal of Honor flag by the Commandant of the Marine Corps at the time, General Michael Hagee, who was the Commandant when I first got into the Marine Corps. And this happened in front of the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C., in front of over 1,000 people, family, friends, other Marines. And Lucas said, to have these young men here in our present, it just rejuvenates this old heart of mine. I love the Corps even more, knowing that my country is defended by such fine young people. And he ended up dying in 2008 of leukemia in Mississippi. Dude was just a fucking beast, an absolute. I mean, how do you get around that? The dude was awesome. I remember seeing an interview with him, and he was saying how crazy it was to be a Medal of Honor recipient. Because he's like, people were always giving you stuff, just they wanted to, to help you out, whatever. And he said someone gave him this nice red, muscle car sort of thing. I don't remember what kind it was, but just this old dude, and probably in his 70s when he did the interview, was like, he's like, the back seat of that car got more miles than the car itself, which just to me just fucking epitomizes Marines right there. This fucking old dude, old Marine, just fucking talking about all the women that he, all the miles he put on the back seat of that car, which is just fucking awesome. But what else can you say to it? He was 17 when he got the Medal of Honor. Dude's a beast, and he's very pro Marine Corps ever since then. He just would help out, and I don't even really know what he did for work, but excellent dude. So yeah, all right, guys. If you have any questions, concerns, comments about this outstanding Marine, feel free to hit me up, and I will see you in the next one. Semper Fi.